Man City have now, of course, completed the signing of Antoine Semenyo, but it is understood that City are now looking to bolster their squad with a new centre-back this month, as Josko Gvardiol, Ruben Diaz and John Stones are all sidelined with injuries at the moment. And the only name that's really been linked with a move to City at the moment is in demand Crystal Palace captain Marc Guehi, who continues to be linked with an exit from Selhurst Park at a time when he's got less than 6 months remaining on his contract. Palace are at risk of losing him in the summer, Gay, and there's been suggestions that despite that, Gay may decide to stay at Palace in January and wait until the summer to make a final decision on his future, with a host of top European clubs set to battle for his signature if that is the case. But it's also understood that Palace would be prepared to sell Gay for the right price in January, and Man City are seemingly the main club at the moment that are trying to explore a move this month and try and push to get that deal over the line. So, Stephen, what are your thoughts on Gay as a player and him potentially joining City this month? Is this a deal that you would like to see happen?
Yeah, I think he's a cracking player. I think you need multiple centre backs in football in 2026. You look at Arsenal, they've got about 8 players, 9 players who can play at centre back, and I'm not even exaggerating. Most of them can. I think City this season they went into the campaign with Diaz, Vardiol, Ake Stones, and Kusanov. Vitor Reis out on loan, Elaine, of course, now back, but he was on loan at Watford. Those five, then you consider that Ake and Stones, like the sick notes, you call it a half a player there in terms of fitness, essentially 4 centre backs. Um, and it's not been enough because people get suspended, get injured. I think these days, given the amount of games you play, you do need 6 or 7 people who can play centre back. And Mark Guehi, if he came into City, even if we had Josko Vardiol and Diaz. There's three there: Josko Vardiol, Diaz, and Gay. Kusanov, the fourth one, almost certainly. Stones and Ake are going this summer. I'm almost certain they're going this summer. You're at 4 there. Say Max Elaine stays, and then say Vitor Reis comes back. That's 6 centre backs, which feels a lot. But I think it's probably necessary. I think Elaine would probably go out on loan again, or Vitor Reis. One of those two would stay. Vitor Reis currently do really well at Girona on loan. I think 5 centre backs is a necessity next season though, because as I said, too much football, players get injured and so on. And I understand if one gets minimal football and wants to leave for next summer, so be it. But that's the price you pay because the cream rises to the top and all that kind of stuff. But I think you need the depth these days because injuries just pile up so quickly. Teams play like 70 games a season unless you're United and you just play 40. But most teams play an awful lot of football these days. And I think, yeah, the idea of just having 5 centre backs, especially with 2 injury prone, it's just not enough. So, yeah, Gay would make an awful lot of sense. And stylistically, a cracking player, 25, 26. I think he's 25, I think still.
Yeah.
But either way, loads of experience. England international, very likable person by all accounts. Very mature, a leader, incredibly composed, technically excellent. So good at just stepping into midfield, really two-footed as well. A really crisp passer, aggressive, physical centre back. He's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. Having said all that, I just don't think it's going to happen. Like, I think reading the tea leaves right now, I mean, it might be that it doesn't happen now. Like, it could be that, leaving in January right now if you're Mark Guehi, could be a big ask when you could wait to the summer and have some of Europe's finest clubs battling for your signature. Like, you might leave it until, May and have Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Bayern Munich, and Juventus, and PSG all knocking on his door. Not to say he wants to go to them, but the money you'd get as a result of that and the career opportunities that you get as a result of that. I don't know where he wants to go. But I think personally, look, obviously I'd go for Man City. I'm a City fan, and I think it's a cracking move, City, because he's going to start for one of the biggest clubs in world football under Guardiola in the World Cup year. His immediate starting will play till the end of the season. So it's great for his immediate short term World Cup gains. But he doesn't necessarily need that. He's probably going to start for England anyway. And I think he's thinking, well, I'll just wait until the summer, get a massive signing on fee. I'll have a nice send off with Crystal Palace when I leave at the end of the season. I don't risk, any complications for ahead of the World Cup. World Cup, I'm a guaranteed starter here, and I get a better payday and I get more opportunities that I can really think about over time. I don't think City are going to get it done in this window. It's potentially in the summer. My gut tells me that he's thinking about elsewhere. I think he agreed for Liverpool. I can also see him potentially still being a London boy, but he also there was some I saw some suggesting that he'd be interested in Bayern playing over there. So I don't. I think it's City. I think he look. I don't think he'd be against playing for City, but I think he's curious for his other options. And logically, it makes no sense to join City right now. You know, if you're considering, yeah, if you're playing the card, so to speak. And I'd love him. I think he's a really good player, but I think this is a speculative one for City and a very hard deal to get done potentially in January.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be, and I think some people have maybe questioned whether Gay would be first choice, first team regular for City if all of City's defensive options were fit and available, and that could maybe in the back of Gay's mind when making a decision on his future, long term. He doesn't want to be just a short term fix for City this season. What he wants to be eventually, become a main man in that back line. So, do you think that Gay should have concerns over his game time,
I don't think he
from a long
should.
term at City? No.
No, I don't think he should. I think that like the Guardiola said, he's drawn to Diaz, and because of that leadership and that seniority, and he makes people play better. I think if you ask Guardiola, who has got better defensive attributes for this City team now, Diaz and Kusanov, I think he'd tell you Kusanov. I truly believe that. I think Kusanov's ability with pace to cover is absurd. He's like a one-man wrecking ball and covers the width of the channels. He's a cheat code of a defender, but when you're trying to build a team with character and trying to pick it up, I think Diaz obviously is a cracking defender, and I think his leadership brings more out of the others around him, and I think Guardiola's leaning towards that. Now, having said all that, Marc Guehi is a natural captain. He's a really good leader, a respected player. Maybe not quite as chest pumping and thunderous and testosterone filled as Ruben Diaz, but he's a leader. He has a similar mentality to Diaz that way, while also being faster. I would argue and being more comfortable on the ball. I think if I was Marc Guehi, I'd be looking at Ruben Diaz, who and thinking I actually can get ahead of him. Diaz out for several weeks now. Vardy out to the end of the season. If you're Mark Guehi now, you've got a more or less uninterrupted run at the team for 4 or 5 months because look, Kusanov's great and Diaz will return, but he's going to start ahead of Kusanov, I reckon, if Diaz comes back, and he's going to play for the next 2 months guaranteed anyway. Like Gay's got 2 months to essentially play his way to the City side, and once Vardiol. It's back. We never, no idea how long it's going to be or when he's going to be fully fit again. He'll be the star next season when Vardio plays for City again. At that point, Gay could have looked fantastic, played great football, passed it around nicely. Stones and Ake will be going, and he might just be locked in. It could be Ruben Diaz who sits on the bench after that. Diaz will be, he'll be 29 reasonably soon, and it's not young, it's not old. But Gay is a few years younger than him. He's a better on the ball. He's a faster than Ruben Diaz, and he's a captain. And Guardiola could go Guardiola and Gay there, and he could have seen it. And it could be that Diaz, that necessity of his leadership might not matter anymore. City are better. So I think Gay's got a cracking chance. I think this, if anything, this is the best chance he'll ever have to lock down a slot, in my opinion, in a top European side because he's a guaranteed star right now for Pep Guardiola. And with players injured, and yeah, so I don't really buy that. I mean, we'll look at Arsenal. Is he going to start ahead of Gabriel Saliba? Not necessarily. Calafiori and Mosquera, Timber can all play there as well. Hincapié as well can all play there. It's not guaranteed there. Liverpool, okay, Canati could go, so almost certainly get a chance there. Van Dijk's getting older, so I think Liverpool's a decent one there. Where Liverpool going to be? We don't know. Liverpool are in a bit of a. I mean, obviously Liverpool's a massive step up for him, and they're going to be a Champions League level side. But I don't think there's any guarantee Liverpool in the slot right now are going to compete for the title again. Look, it's still a massive step up for him, but depends what he wants. Bayern, yeah, he probably would start over there. I think some rumours up Mancana might leave potentially, so there's a slot from there. But yeah, I think City of a lot of the major clubs, he could win something this season and start almost certainly. So I don't really buy it. I think he's almost certainly. I don't think it's a positional thing or where would I fit in thing. I think it's let's see what I can do in the summer thing because it makes more sense for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think he would get. Don't think he should be concerned by game time if he was to join City. But despite all that, he might favour moving somewhere else. And as we've said, a lot of clubs in Europe are said to be linked with him. So I think, Gay's got a big decision to make for himself, potentially a career-defining one, this time in his career. If City are then unable to sign Gay in January, where do you think City do go from there? Is a centre-back signing still a must for City this month? Do they turn their attention to another possible target, or could they just put their faith in Kuznetsov, Aki, and Elaine, and for the time being, before the likes of Diaz and potentially Stones recover from injury? What do you think? Where do you think City go from here?
I think Gay's different, than most
Mm.
because I think he's a summer target anyway that they brought forward. I don't think they will, unless there was a real obvious summer target they could bring forward. I don't think they'll go for anyone at this point. I think Gay is an opportunistic signing, one that they'd love to do. But I don't really know else. I think everyone else is going to be project signings at this point. As I said, you got Vitor Reis out on loan, who I think is a cracking player, and you got Kusanov, and I mean, I really rate Vitor Reis, and I think City do too. I think he's a young John Stones coded. I think he's an excellent player, and he's doing really well at Girona. Rumours that he's been considered for the Brazil squad as an outside chance for the World Cup, and I think he's got a lot of charisma. And the idea is he's going to come back next season. Then Ruben Diaz will be back in 6, 7 weeks. It's a long time. That's an awful lot of games. But I presume if you're going to sign any player now, it wouldn't be for the next couple of weeks anyway. And at that point, you're 2, 3 weeks, you're 3, 4 weeks into the 8 week spell of Diaz then. And look, Elaine and Kusa have done really well. Ake's there. Nico Gonzalez could play there. Rodri could play there, as Guardiola said. I think they'll look for someone, but unless it's obvious that's going to be someone they feel they can start next season, I don't really think they'll do it. I think Gay is different because he's potentially improving the first 11 quality. I saw that young lad Cresswell mentioned as well. The young English lad who's playing in France, I want to say. I
Yeah, I
forgot
think he's
where he
playing for
played. Yeah,
Toulouse, I think. Yeah.
Toulouse. You're right. Yeah, but that's a project signing.
Mm.
He's an old school centre back. I've watched him before. But he's a physical old school centre back, very cut in the Ruben Diaz mold. But that's a project centre back.
Yeah.
That's a Kusanov, Vitor Reis level signing where you don't know how good they're going to be. At that point, for the money you have to spend. And for the sake of a month and a half, just keep Max Lane playing. I just don't think it's worth it to have another young centre back signed. So, I mean, if it's not Gay, it could be a random name we don't know about, but I think they might just persist.
Yeah, exactly. And just finally on transfers, can you see City signing any other players in other positions this month, or
No,
the sole focus will be on potentially signing a new centre back?
no, not at all. I don't think
Yeah.
so. I think Semenyo is a cracking signing, and I think the big signings now are potential right back in the future and in midfielder. Elliot Anderson muted, but that's you can't do that in January. The next signings City are going to make are big names. I think the big signings they are bolstering the squad big time. They're not project signings, and they are definitely next summer.